Sydney transforms from a British penal colony into one of the world's great cities, and in this AI reconstruction, we're about to watch 250 years unfold. This is the story of how a prison camp on the edge of the world became a global metropolis. Subscribe to see more cities brought back to life, and drop a comment suggesting which city you want to see next. Captain James Cook steps onto the shore at Botany Bay, and the British flag rises over Australian soil for the first time. Cook and his crew from HMS Endeavour have been mapping the eastern coastline, and this landing marks Britain's first territorial claim. The local Gweagal people watch these strangers arrive, unaware that this moment will change everything. Cook names the bay after the botanists aboard, who catalogue hundreds of unknown plant species. Within 18 years, the British will return with convict ships to establish a permanent colony. Sydney Cove spreads along the harbour's edge, and the penal colony is taking root. Artist Thomas Watling captures the settlement from across the water, showing scattered buildings, cleared land, and smoke rising from chimneys. Convicts labour under the watch of guards, building structures and working the land. The colony struggles with food shortages and isolation, but it's surviving. Ships anchor in the cove, the only lifeline to Britain and the outside world. Sydney is barely a decade old, clinging to the edge of an unknown continent. The colony expands along Sydney Cove, and substantial buildings now line the waterfront. Red-roofed structures replace the rough shelters of the early years. The settlement pushes inland from the harbour, claiming more land from the bush. Convicts continue arriving on transport ships, providing forced labour that builds the colony's infrastructure. Free settlers are starting to arrive too, seeing opportunity in this distant outpost. Sydney is no longer just a prison camp. It's becoming a real town. The Supreme Court of New South Wales sits alongside St James's Church, and Sydney is building the institutions of a proper colonial capital. The court, one of Australia's earliest, administers British law to a population that's shifted from mostly convicts to free settlers. St James's Church, with its distinctive spire, serves the Anglican faithful. Horse-drawn carriages roll past on dirt roads, and wooden fences line the properties. Sydney is 54 years old, and the rough penal colony is transforming into a respectable city with churches, courts, and civic pride. George Street runs through the heart of Sydney, and the city looks almost dignified now. Three-storey buildings line the wide boulevard, housing shops, offices, and residences. The gold rushes in Victoria and New South Wales are pumping money into the city, funding construction and bringing thousands of fortune seekers through Sydney's port. Pedestrians stroll the sidewalks in Victorian dress, while horse-drawn carts haul goods. The convict era is ending. In just 4 years, transportation of prisoners to New South Wales will stop completely, and Sydney will reinvent itself as a free city. The Garden Palace rises in the Domain, and it's the most spectacular building Sydney has ever seen. Built for the 1879 to 1880 International Exhibition, this massive structure covers 28 acres with its elaborate domes, towers, and glass and iron construction. Thousands of people gather on the grounds, dressed in their finest Victorian clothing, to see exhibits from around the world. Sydney is showing off, proving it can compete with Melbourne and match any European capital for grandeur. The palace will stand for only 3 years before burning to the ground in 1882, destroying countless artifacts and exhibits. George Street pulses with life, and Alfred Tischbauer captures Sydney at its Victorian peak. Grand buildings line both sides of the street, their ornate facades competing for attention. Crowds fill the sidewalks, shopping, and conducting business. Horse-drawn carts navigate between pedestrians while dogs wander freely. Electric lights are coming soon, but for now, gas lamps will illuminate the street at night. Sydney's population has exploded past 220,000, making it one of the largest cities in the British Empire outside of Britain itself. Sydney spreads around the harbour like a sprawling organism, and this bird's eye view shows how the city has conquered the landscape. The grid pattern extends inland from Sydney Cove, while suburbs reach north across the harbour and south toward Botany Bay. Ships crowd the harbour, connecting Sydney to the world. The city is becoming a major Pacific port, handling wool exports that fund the grand buildings downtown. Railways now connect Sydney to the interior, bringing goods and people to the coast. From high above, Sydney's red roofs cluster around the harbour, and Sydney Town Hall's tower rises in the lower left. Artist A.H. Fullwood captures a city of nearly 400,000 people that's still growing fast. Ships pack the harbour, their masts creating a forest of timber. The suburbs are pushing outward in every direction, swallowing farmland and bushland. Churches, government buildings, and commercial blocks dominate the skyline. Sydney is less than 100 years old, but it looks like it's been here forever. Tom Roberts paints Sydney Harbour from Milson's Point, and the view shows why artists have set up camps around these shores. The harbour stretches wide and blue, dotted with sailing vessels and steamships. The city rises on the southern shore, its buildings creating a low skyline that's about to change dramatically. Artists are drawn to the harbour's light and the way it transforms throughout the day. In the 1880s and 1890s, these camps become gathering places for Australian Impressionists who are creating a distinctly local art movement. The Queen Victoria building dominates York Street, and it's the most ornate shopping arcade Sydney has ever seen. Built in the 1890s to commemorate Queen Victoria's Golden Jubilee, this Romanesque revival palace stretches an entire city block. The massive dome rises over elaborate stonework and arched windows. Horse-drawn carriages roll past while pedestrians in Victorian dress walk the covered sidewalks. Sydney Town Hall's tower rises in the distance. The QVB houses shops, cafes, and concert halls, creating a grand commercial centre that turns shopping into a social event. Railway Square becomes the hub of Sydney's tram network, and the scene is controlled chaos. Trams crisscross the square, their overhead wires creating a geometric web above the street. Pedestrians dodge between the moving cars, while horses and automobiles add to the confusion. New buildings rise in the background, including early skyscrapers that are starting to change Sydney's skyline. The tram system connects every corner of the growing city, making it possible for workers to live miles from their jobs. Sydney is becoming a modern metropolis. The Sydney Harbour Bridge rises over the water, and the two halves are about to meet. Construction began in 1923, and now the massive steel arch nearly spans the harbour from shore to shore. Ferries still crowd the wharves at McMahon's Point, carrying passengers across the water as they have for decades. When the bridge opens in 1932, it will transform Sydney, making the northern suburbs accessible and linking communities that were separated by water. The bridge will become Sydney's defining landmark, more iconic than any building or monument. The Sydney Opera House rises on Bennelong Point, and its revolutionary design is causing arguments across the city. Danish architect Jørn Utzon won the design competition in 1957, but construction has been a nightmare of technical challenges and cost overruns. Those distinctive white shells are unlike anything built before, requiring new engineering solutions for problems nobody anticipated. The Harbour Bridge arches over the scene, watching this bold experiment take shape. Utzon will resign in 1966 after battles with the government, never seeing his masterpiece completed. The Opera House will finally open in 1973, immediately becoming the symbol of modern Sydney and one of the most photographed buildings on Earth. Sydney explodes into a global metropolis over the next 6 decades. The Opera House opens in 1973, instantly defining the city's image worldwide. Skyscrapers transform the skyline as Sydney becomes a major financial centre. The population nearly doubles, fueled by immigration that makes Sydney one of the world's most multicultural cities. The 2000 Olympics showcases Sydney to billions of viewers, cementing its status as a Pacific powerhouse. Darling Harbour gets redeveloped. The suburbs sprawl endlessly westward. By 2025, Sydney is home to over 5 million people, a far cry from the convict settlement that clung to Sydney Cove 2 centuries earlier.